Let's make deploying your malware infrastructure easy.
So Manish, tell me how easy it is to get some malicious software infrastructure.
Yeah, Andy. Unfortunately, it seems to be getting easier at least, and it's kind of scary. So researchers at Recorded Future, they do a report every year, and what they're seeing is a significant rise in cyber criminals using these, open source offensive cybersecurity tools, right? And a lot of them, they have a legitimate purpose, right? They're used for they're used for testing your network or your different parts of your infrastructure to see if there's any vulnerabilities or any areas where an attacker could get in. Unfortunately, the flip side to that is an attacker. It's kind of identifying the places that your network or your infrastructure is weak. So it's being repurposed by some of the bad actors to just do exactly that. So Recorded Future, they call out some tools that they're kind of expecting to see an increase being used in the near future, probably some over the next year. And there's a tool called Covenant, Octopus C2, Sliver, and Mythic. And I just did some quick searches on the internet, and I was pretty easily able to find Sliver, Octopus C2, Covenant. They're all available on GitHub. So between the ease of availability, the good documentation, and the GUI as a means of accessing the tool, I could easily see this being used by some of the lesser experienced actors and many more actors. If you take, for instance, Cobalt Strike, right? It's a developed tool. It's a legitimate tool, and it's not a free tool. It requires a license, but the code for that was leaked on GitHub, I think around like last November, and as a result of that, we've been seeing a lot of actors, especially APT actors. They're using these cracked versions or trial versions of Cobalt Strike in a lot of their campaigns. And I think we've seen maybe Fin7 and Ocean Lotus and APT 41. And as part of the research, Recorded Future found that they observed the highest number of C2s last year. C2 servers last year were all Cobalt Strike servers. And I think they observed about 1,441 in 2020 that were Cobalt Strike, 1,122 that were Metasploit, and 454 that are Poopy Rat. And all of these are, fairly easily accessible, with the exception of Cobalt Strike. You would get, a trial version or something or a crack version. Part of the research is that majority of the servers that they found last year, they were all linked to either APT actors or high-end financial actors, right? And that's where we're at, I guess for 2020. But as these tools are, more readily available with the GUI access, like I said earlier, I could see less experienced actors that aren't at the full sophistication level of an APT or the high-end financial actors kind of incorporating these tools and using them as part of their campaigns. And with the availability of infrastructure, in the cloud, I think they could pretty easily and quickly get their C2 servers up and running, get their infrastructure built out, and, start their attack campaigns. And, it's not just limited to the APT actors anymore because of the ease of use. So we're probably going to see a lot more of these attacks, and maybe they'll be easier to mitigate because there may be some less sophistication in place from these, maybe some criminal actors they're not as, their skill level is not up to par as APT. So it just remains to be seen. But I think part of it is not just that we're going to see lesser skilled actors using these. We're probably going to see a lot more actors using these, and that's part of where that's going to be the problem, right? It's going to be all of these different attacks coming out, over the year, and it's not a matter of how easy they are to take down or detect, but there's just going to be so many of them, and that's pretty scary.
Yeah.
It does leave some avenues for trying to understand how we can detect these sooner. I think their analysis found that it takes about 61 days from the servers to get deployed to when they're able to get detected. There's some things that we can do to kind of detect these earlier. Hopefully, that's probably where some of our research and efforts should go to.
Now that something's open source, obviously it's going to get adopted if it's good,
Right.
if it's a good tool, and Cobalt Strike and others, those are really good tools. So they're going to get adopted. And like you said, I think there's like two branches here. One of them is the less experienced, not nation state actor who's just going to take the tool and run with it. And you would think, if you're not changing the tool, if you're not customizing it, it's going to be a little easier to detect, especially if you're
Right.
not changing like file names and such, because then,
Right.
signature based matching is just going to catch it every time. It's super simple to do. But then on the other hand, you've got APT groups who are going to take that tool and kind of gut it and pull it apart and say, okay, well, why don't we take this piece from here and this piece from there? And now we've got this like Frankenstein type tool
Right.
that nobody else has, and no signature detection system is going to catch this, right?
Right.
Another aspect of it is, you look at, if I run Mimikatz on a box, I would hope that it's going to be caught because it's Mimikatz. Everybody knows how to catch
Right.
Mimikatz, right? But that's not super the case. That's not necessarily the case because there's different variants of Mimikatz. There's obfuscated Mimikatz. There's PowerShell in memory Mimikatz, and things start to get different versions of them going, and it gets harder and harder to detect these things. So I think what's interesting is once you open source these tools, where they go, sort of the diaspora of where these tools end up, it's going to be a challenge for security researchers, but I think it's going to be also an opportunity to improve on heuristics based detection, behavioral detection, understanding what it is these tools are trying to do, not based on their files or hashes or anything, but based on the things that they want to get done, they as in the tools.
Right.
So it's interesting.
I think another variability there is, your security philosophy, right? So I think in the past, and maybe some, security folks today, they may believe that, make sure your perimeter is well guarded, and if your perimeter is well guarded, you're fairly secure, and you kind of put less effort into securing your internal infrastructure, right? But if something like a Mimikatz is deployed in your internal infrastructure and you're not really looking for it, then that's going to be a huge problem for you. So, there's a lot of variability in a lot of different places here, as far as being able to kind of modify the tool a little bit so that it's undetectable, where it gets deployed, how it gets deployed. It's pretty scary,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of smart people out there. And today, if you're inexperienced and you deploy it and you get detected quickly, you're going to try to learn why and, make sure that doesn't happen in your next time, and then just keep improving on it. And as you get more and more experience, you'll end up being more successful.
I'm kind of dumbfounded in the sense, the same tool can be used in various ways, especially nefarious ways in this case. Like you said, if it's morphed into something like a Frankenstein kind of tool, it's not really easy. Even with the layered approach, it would be really tough for the researchers to come up with good detections. That being said, Manish, you said there is some dwell time for the detection of these packages, right? I think I've read there is about 54.8 days on each server it would be residing on it. Is it on the hosting side, or is it the date from it has been deployed to detection from one of the researchers?
Yeah, I think it's 61 days. I think they found is the average time from when it's deployed to when it's detectable by researchers. But I think the 54 days around that time is how the days where it's the server's serving malware or doing something malicious is what they found, right? Because the initial deployment, once the server is deployed, they need to get the tools loaded, they need to get the infrastructure set up. So there's probably a few days, for that to take place, and then once the campaign starts. It's up for, seems to be about 54 to 55 days.
Okay, and now I understood. Basically, that is the time they're trying to set up the environment for their endeavor.
Right.
Okay.
So it's kind of, it's pretty scary, and I'm sure, as they get detected earlier, they'll become more creative and figure out how to, get those detection times up to be even longer.
I mean, it's closer to 2 months right now, even if the 55 days, that's a long dwell time.